Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host Faiza Naqvi with a prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy and blessed and fill this world with peace and justice, inshallah. Ameen. And hasten the appearance of Imam of our time, inshallah. Today, as we all know, how the situation is going on between Iran and Israel, and Israel has responded to the previous attacks done by Iran, and they have obviously did a retaliatory attack on the weekend on Saturday, and now we can see that Iran has to respond to these attacks. And Supreme Leader Sayyid Ali Khamenei said that we would respond the attacks done by Israel, but they will be measured and they will be obviously calculated properly, and all the things will be seen in depth and should not be taken as downgraded attacks. And we can also see that today, as in Gaza, situation is not good. In the bombing in north side of Gaza, there more than 100 people were killed today. And besides that, UNRWA, which has been banned as well by Israel, and United States said that Israel is supposed to look after the people of Gaza. So how these things are going to work within the region, how Iran would respond to these attacks, and what Israel has achieved out of these attacks, and what would the ban on UNRWA would impact on humanitarian aid in the Gaza. So these kind of how the situation within the region. So we will discuss it in further detail with our prestigious guests. I'll move on to them and would speak to them in depth. We do have Shabir Razavi. He is a political analyst, and we do have Sister Batul. She is political analyst as well, and we do have Sayyid Musa. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, Shabir Razavi, I would request you to explain how this act of aggression, how do you see the act of aggression by the Israel on Iranian sovereign country? What did Israel, what objective Israel had through this attack, which he wanted to achieve?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, the esteemed guests, yourself, and also your viewers. Firstly, my condolences to the families of the martyrs in Gaza, in West Bank, in Lebanon, in Iran, in Syria, and Yemen, Iraq as well. Plus also our supplications for those who have been injured. We pray for their speedy recovery so that they can stand up and fight against the aggressive regime of Zionism in the occupied territories. Look, the situation is quite straightforward. People sort of try to say that it's complex, it sort of really can't be very clearly explained. But the reality is that for the last 75, 76 years, since the inception of the Zionist entity in 1948, it has continuously murdered people, it has continuously ethnically cleansed people, continuously committed genocide in all of the territories that it occupies at this moment. So anyone telling us that this all started on 7th of October and post 7th of October is really talking utter nonsense and has no idea about history and the context of this conflict. Of course, the other thing that one must remember is that since 1979, when the Islamic Revolution was, with the advent of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, Imam Khomeini, the first step that he took was to not have any relationship with the Zionist entity. The Zionist embassy was given over to the PLO. Yasser Arafat visited and met Imam Khomeini at that time. Plus also the other thing that Iran did was to cut off any diplomatic relations with the apartheid regime in South Africa. So Iran's foreign policy has always been based on moral and ethical grounds to support the oppressed people for the last 45 years. And that hasn't changed. It is for this particular reason that Iran has supported, defended, and really spoken out in favor of the Palestinians that it has been penalized. If we may remember that 72 martyrs were bombed in the Iranian parliament. The president and the prime minister, Bahonar and Raiji was assassinated, murdered in Iran. Many of the ulama, really key players in the Islamic revolution, Dr. Beheshti, Dr. Bahonar, and all these sort of luminaries of the Islamic revolution were murdered, assassinated by the what is called the MKO, the Mujahideen Khalq, they call it, but they're really no Mujahideen, and they're not in any way defending the Khalq, if you like. So they are really anti-Islam forces that were operating in Iran and supported by obviously the West continuously and Israel. And then we had the 8-year war imposed on the Islamic Republic of Iran. The only reason it was imposed on Iran was that it was fighting for the oppressed people. If today Iran decides that it will have normal relationship with the Zionist entity, then there will be no issue, no human rights, no issue of women being sort of marginalized or sort of, killed in police custody. Nothing will happen to Iran so long as it decides to normalize relations. And of course, we must remember as well that Netanyahu himself and his cohorts in the regime have clearly, on numerous occasions in the last 75 years, and particularly in the last 5-10 years, have said that the main enemy is Iran. And there's a clip that one can see when Netanyahu was asked that, who is your enemy? He said, Iran, Iran, Iran. So the reality is that of all 57, 56 Muslim nations, they have been sidelined by the Zionist entity and its supporters. And when one talks about proxies, Israel is a classic example of a proxy of the United States and the collective West. So that's the sort of main proxy there, fighting on behalf of imperialism, racism, apartheid, and all kinds of ugly isms that have tried to sort of kill humanity completely. So Iran is the key player standing up against the Zionist entity. Therefore, it will have to continuously bear the brunt, which it has, as I said, during the 8-year imposed war, sanctions, multiple sanctions for the last 46 years. They've really tried to destroy Iran. But Alhamdulillah, when God is on your side, nothing will sort of diminish the power of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we see clearly now that with True Promise 1 and True Promise 2, Iran has really stood up against the Zionist entity, and really they can't comprehend how Iran has become such a powerful military nation. In West Asia, that's the only powerful military nation. There is no other country that is as powerful. Pakistan, one may say, has a nuclear weapon, but really it is run by eunuchs, I would say. Therefore, it can't have any power at all in the sort of calculation of the Muslim nation. So really, for supporting Palestine, Iran will continuously suffer. But with the grace of God, it will be able to defend itself. And Mr. Arachi, the foreign minister, has clearly said that it will defend its sovereignty, it will defend its territory, and Iran has all the right to defend itself. Our Prime Minister, Mr. Stama, said that Iran shouldn't escalate, but I think he should tell his friends in Tel Aviv that they shouldn't escalate because they have continuously escalated the situation in the last year plus now, since they started attacking and committing genocide in Gaza. It's really Israel that has escalated the situation, made it very difficult for people in West Asia, but Iran is really articulating the position of the oppressed people in a most powerful manner that it can. And I suspect a lot of analysts are saying that no, Iran will perhaps not sort of attack Israel, but I think it's on the cards. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in the coming days and weeks.
Thank you so much for explaining the situation which Iran used to have, and even now how it is fighting against these obstacles coming from Zionist entity and the whole Western world, you can say. Sister Batul, what are your thoughts? How do you see this attack by Israel on Iran? Do you think they have really achieved something? Because they are saying that we have obviously we tried to hit their radar system and some kind of a system which was protecting their nuclear and other facilities. So they tried what they try to achieve, they have achieved, and they sent so many, I think so, aircrafts, if I'm not wrong, in order to attack Iran. So how do you see what exactly they have achieved out of this attack?
Indicates that the Islamic Republic of Iran has succeeded in achieving a significant deterrence equation in its favor, in the sense that it's created fear within the Israeli occupation entity of launching an impactful strike. We know that the majority of the strikes came from outside of Iran, striking kind of areas on the border, Khuzestan and Iran, and that was due to fear of Iranian air defense interception. And also this shows a desire to reduce tensions. No photos or social media images were released, which is also evidence that the strikes were not serious. So this indicates to us that Israel is taking the potential Iranian retaliation very seriously, and has even kind of signaled to Iran that its strikes are limited, therefore please do not attack us. We know that America and the occupation entity are calculating the escalation of events, and they're seriously considering what the Iranian strategy is and its influence more broadly in the region. We know Iran has broader deterrence options in other fronts. We know that Iran spearheads the cohesion of the resistance axis and the totality of its support. We know, obviously, from the attacks that happened, that the strikes were limited. The psychological, economic factors also, so if you want to assess the effect that this might have had on the Iranian Tuman currency, that was also practically limited. So all in all, this only strengthens the Iranian strategy in supporting its allies, in contrast to Netanyahu's failed strategy. Iran's response might also be limited to less than, at least I do believe it would be limited to less than what we saw in Operation True Promise 2. But we know that essentially Iran's real response is to continue its strategy of support for the entire axis. We know that is the real response that leads to the demise of the Israeli occupation entity. It's continuing in this war of attrition. And as Israel is stupid enough to be digging a bigger ditch and hole for itself with time, as it's ramped its escalation going from Raza into Lebanon, the losses are becoming unsustainable and unbearable for this entity. And we know that no war goes on forever. Now, if one asks the question of why the Israeli occupation entity's attacks on Iran were limited, it was ultimately because the Iranian attack in Operation True Promise 2 created ultimately a strategic crisis for Israel. It effectively reduced its previous, if you want to call them tactical wins or successes in the initial series of blows to the resistance leaders, the attacks through the pager, followed by the high-profile assassinations. Effectively, Operation True Promise 2 blew that out of the water. It sent a clear message that Iran will not allow the Israeli occupation entity to gain the upper hand in deterrence. when the resistance axis is facing these kinds of hits, like it did in September, and intervention becomes, necessary, Iran will respond in an effective manner. And in a way, we anticipated that the Israeli response would not be severe enough to provoke a strong Iranian counterattack. And we know that's also because the US doesn't want to directly engage in an offensive alongside the Israeli occupation entity. And there's no way that Israel can fight Iran. It would have to be America fighting Iran. And America will not get dragged to Israel's square. Israel's America's project, America is the sponsor of the Israeli occupation entity. And America knows that if it chose to intervene, its bases in the region could come under threat. And we know, especially during election period, that's when, America doesn't take any kind of decisive decision. So we know, as you've mentioned in the beginning, that Iran said it will respond, but that it will be kind of like a considered response. I don't think it will be meaningful in the way that Operation True Promise 2 was. And that's based on Iran's own assessment. So Iran said that they'll strike in proportion to how they were hit. But we know the Israeli occupation entity almost achieved nothing in this hit. So there is also that possibility that Iran would place that kind of retaliation card in its pocket. It will play it as it sees fit, as the interest dictates to do so. But I do think it is important to stress that in the kind of top analyst assessment of the situation, if there is, and this is what the reality on the ground has shown as well, that if there is a kind of weakness in the mind of America or in the mind of Israel regarding the resistance axis, meaning if they perceive the resistance axis to be weak, that is when America and the Israeli occupation entity will hit harder. This was something that became clear in the initial blows last month with the pager attacks followed by the assassination. The opposite happens when the Israeli occupation entity sees that the resistance is steadfast in action, sees that the axis is not responding to that trap of, do not retaliate now. There's a ceasefire waiting to be signed. So if the political leadership, if the political level in the leadership is not up to kind of this level of confrontation, doesn't see the necessity to confront inherently, that ultimately becomes an advantage to the Israeli occupation entity. We know that they've already been discussing this kind of like further retaliation due to the drone attack on Netanyahu's house. We know that effectively the Israeli occupation entity has broken the red lines when they escalated into Lebanon. And we saw how Iran then restored that deterrence through Operation True Promise 2. But in any case, any act of aggression against sovereignty, the Israeli occupation entity only understands the language of force being used against it, and that was clear in the way that Israel responded to Operation True Promise 2. So to show signs of interest in the West, to show signs of negotiation, especially right now, America has no initiative for that, especially during election period. It's not in that mood, it's not in that phase. So the counter to this would ultimately be Iran recognizing the pure Western evil face, assuming even if America has good intentions, suppose even on that level, then good will not come out of it, but we know that the intentions are evil. So if it is allowed to weaken the resistance in any other way, that is harmful. So this obviously requires robust decisions from the side that believe that the West is inherently aggressive, has aggressive intentions. And we know Sayyid Ali Khamenei made this clear in his speech when he said that the Israeli occupation entity are making miscalculations. They don't know Iran, and he stressed on how it's for the officials to be the ones to assess and precisely apprehend what needs to be done, to do whatever is in the best interests of the country and the nation, stressing how Iran must make them understand the power, the determination, and the initiative of the Iranian people. So within all of this analysis, I'll just conclude with this, it is only seen in Iran's interest to put forward the necessary support for the resistance as its priority in Iranian politics. Before this idea of, sanctions removal, especially when tensions are high like they are now. And we know if Trump comes into power, things will get worse for Iran in particular. So this idea of proposals right now diplomatically is almost considered like a free compromise. It's not in its place right now. We're at a stage, though, where the Israeli occupation entity is securing severe losses in Lebanon. So it's really not in its interest to continue the war. America's not in the mood right now to even consider this idea of like ceasefire, but post-election period where the new administration settles, it is very likely that they will feel the need to pressure the Israeli occupation entity because no war can go on forever. And ultimately, this is Israel shooting itself in the foot alongside American interests in the region with the continuation of war.
Thank you, sister. Our both guest has explained and expressed their analysis regarding the retaliation by the Israel, and if Iran decides to attack back and retaliate. Obviously, they do have a right of self-defense as well, and the Supreme Leader Sayyid Ali Khamenei also said that evil has been committed on their land, and it should not be downplayed, nor it should be exaggerated, and it should be responded obviously in a proportionate or measured way. So. There's one way which Supreme Leader said. There's another thing which is like a warning which has been given today in United Nations meeting somewhere, and the United States said Iran will have to see the consequence. So what do you think are those consequences could be? And this all the situation reminds me of the first speech of Sayyid Nasrullah, who said like this is the time for United States and Israel to think and decide together. So do you think this is a difficult time for Iran to decide that how they are going to respond, or this is the time for Israel and America to decide like what they are supposed to do next?
Well, the US is conducting this war. The genocide that's going on against Gaza and the people of Lebanon is 100% an Anglo-Zionist American-led operation. The Americans are fully complicit. They planned and mapped this out. They're in full consultation with the Israelis, and the Israelis won't do anything if the Americans don't give them the green light. So this is an American genocide. This is a British, American, Anglo-Zionist genocide. It's not just Israel. It's not Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's not fall into the trap of trying to point fingers at Netanyahu and singling him out as if the rest of Israeli society isn't 97% of them isn't supporting the genocide, as if all the other political parties in the Knesset aren't cheering on Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts in killing and exterminating Gazans. No, this is a collective, absolutely premeditated, ongoing effort to ethnically cleanse, exterminate, to massacre, to do the Holocaust of the 21st century. So, I'm going to throw it back at Jewish Zionists because they don't like that word Holocaust, do they? They like appropriating that, but it is essentially a Jewish extremist Holocaust that is being inflicted on the Palestinian people. I can't describe it as anything else because that's what the state of Israel sees itself as a Jewish Zionist state. That's what Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, Smotrich all say. And America is a Zionist occupied government. The establishment of America has been appropriated by Zionist Christians, Zionist Jews. These are the two forces which basically control all American policy, and that's where the power lies. So I can't get away from the fact that Zionism is essentially the ideology and the movement which is essentially wedded and married to it. That doesn't disclude Keir Starmer. If I was to see Keir Starmer sometime, he's lucky I'm not out and about too much where he is these days, but a few eggs might be appropriate at the very least. But the reality is that men and people like this who walk around in suits with their fine silver-tongued words, he's not even silver-tongued to be honest, he's an imbecile. But the reality is that these people literally, when I see them as people who are literally devilish with their blood-soaked in hands. I see them as vicious barbarians who essentially chew babies. That's how I visualize them now. Because when I see, on the one hand, the beheaded babies they lied about at the beginning with all the hasbara. Now I've seen beheaded babies. I've seen pinioned babies. So how can I not associate that with Biden, the Zionist, Starmer, the Zionist, Netanyahu is just the puppet who's on the front line, who's carrying out all the orders. So let's get it right. First of all, who is responsible for this? And it's really important to, I think, put that down, because the British public and the Western public must take ownership of this. You know, there was collective ownership which was thrust at Muslims every time terrorism was being done. For the last 20 years, we ourselves are the victims of Zionist Western propaganda. And it was Zionist Western propaganda which labeled us all as terrorists, literally by default, because ISIS were Muslims, and apparently we were therefore going to be questioned by Prevent and all the nonsense that's been going on ever since then. So that's my, first of all, parking where the blame of this lies. Now, at every stage, what we're seeing is the air corridor that is supplying all these weapons, just as evidence, is British aircraft, supplied. There are thousands of tons of, unknown weaponry, equipment, whatever else, all passing through Cyprus, coming down from their air bases over there into Lebanon and into of course, Israel, Ben Gurion itself. So the reality is that we've got this full operation, and we've got to call out all the people who are involved in it. If I was to list Egypt as one of these culprits, well, they dedicated 5 ports, apparently, and over £230 million worth of exports to Israel during all this genocide, while simultaneously blocking 5 miles of aid trucks in the Rafah-Gaza border. That's Egypt for you. That's Sisi, right? Okay. Then we've got Turkey. 40% of Israel's oil comes through the Baku-Tbilisi pipeline, and it runs through Turkey via, of course, I think it was mentioned, Alishuvia may have mentioned it, was it Batul, I'm not sure, but Azerbaijan is fully complicit in this genocide too, because they're oiling the tanks, the trucks, and all the DB whatever, bulldozers which are destroying homes and killing kids. So this is another culprit. Saudi Arabia is another one. We have to call them out, because these are all people that the Islamic Republic of Iran has to address. And I know that we're going to come on to why this is relevant to Iran and the conflict as well in a second. But they reportedly refuel Israeli jets at the, I think it's the Hamidiyah Air Force Base. That's something which then allows them to send, jets, Israeli jets and American jets into Yemen to bomb Yemen. The Saudis are still complying with that whole nonsense. The UAE in Morocco, well, they're giving Israel intelligence. They're allowing trade to be conducted. They opened up a corridor for trade from the UAE running through Saudi Arabia and Jordan into Israel in order to offset all the efforts that the Bab al-Mandeb of the Yemen was achieving in terms of putting pressure on Israel. So they've been busy filling in the gap for Eilat port, which has been shut down by the resistance. And so it goes on. Jordan, I think, is even more relevant, because it seems that they're not only trying to they're trying to give Iranian missiles incoming to Tel Aviv, etc., a hard time. They're there with their radars, and they're allowing the Americans full access to be able to intercept. Not that they did that great a job, but nonetheless, the Jordanians have done nothing to stop that. So they are also complicit. Not only that, one has to ask the question that these Israeli jets, which did attack Iran, about 600 missiles apparently were fired by the Israelis from around 100 miles outside of the Iranian borders, from Iraqi airspace controlled by the US. So this is an independent sovereign Iraq whose airspace is controlled by the Americans, and the Jordanians allowed presumably these jet fighters to use that corridor as well. So the Jordanians and the Iraqis in that sense are also being made to look complicit in this attack on Iran. I mean, the list goes on. I could carry on with more of these complicit forces, but the reality is that all of these countries are now faced with a choice, because the Islamic Republic of Iran has also put all of them on notice. And although diplomacy from Mr. Rakchi has given them a clean bill of health for now, what's very clear is that if the Americans were to come in to this engagement, if the Israelis did manage to persuade the Americans to come in, then I'm afraid that every one of the United States bases, or any unit that's complying with America in doing any kind of operation against Iran, will be completely decimated and blown out of the water, and that would involve these countries in one shape or form. So it's in their interest to really push hard to prevent their airspace, their bases from being utilized. I think that's a really important thing, and I think the diplomacy that goes on now is partly going to also involve these nations, because if they can withdraw their support, if they can limit the American kind of audacity, if they have it, to come into an engagement against Iran, then they should do so. This is the time that they should pipe up. Their population should make it clear that they don't want to be dragged directly into the war, even though the Americans occupy them with these bases. 43,000 American soldiers are stationed across these nations, one way or another. Turkey still uses the Daesh and ISIS forces in conjunction with the Americans and the Kurds up in the north to threaten Syria, to continue to destabilize the region. And of course, we know that Israel is a very strong ally of ISIS and is very happy to support them. In fact, I think Al-Qaeda ISIS fraternity this week issued a statement to Hamas to say they should stop what they're doing against Israel. That Israel isn't their enemy. Their enemy is somehow somewhere else. I dare say it's Iran that they're talking about. So there's a whole regional explosion that is going to happen, and Iran will sink. They'll sink the Hormuz Straits. They'll completely decimate it. It will mean 30% of the entire energy of the world will, one way or another, be shut down. Oil refineries around the region will be destroyed. So Saudi Arabia's oil output will be shut down. All of the oil and gas outputs will be closed from that region, including Israel's ones, which will send the world into darkness. Not China, not Russia. Nobody will be unaffected by that. The whole world will go into a huge inflationary spiral. There'll be complete migration, torture. They're already crying about migrants coming to Europe now. Well, wait till this happens, then you'll see what migration is going to really look like, because people will have to you'll have to have this entire displacement of people in that region as the war spreads. And I think it's in the interest of any commonsensical Westerner, any commonsensical politician or diplomat who's not under the payroll of the Zionists. I don't know whether there are many of those in the West left, to be honest. I think they're all pretty much sold. Shabir might know a few, but I certainly don't have any names and numbers of politicians that are clean. And the media itself, well, they're all Zionists. The Barclay brothers are running the media service here, along with Rupert Murdoch and a handful of other Zionists. Shall we move on to academia? That'll also be under their control. If we shift to the economic and the City of London or Wall Street, well, that's in their control. So the one realization that the West should come out from all this is that whilst they were being told that the Islamic Republic of Iran was the danger, Islam was the danger, the Muslim world, the backward Arabs were the danger, or the Palestinians were the terrorists, and that they were actually threatening this nation, it turns out that actually now the light is really being shone at the likes of the Board of Jewish Deputies in Britain. It's going to be shone at the Zionist mafia in the City of London. It's going to be shone on the Zionist mafia, which is in the corridors of Whitehall and Washington, etc. So isn't it time that the British public and the American public and the Western public realized and actually did something about the fact that their own nations have been hijacked by Zionists? Foreign forces are essentially running our nations. We've got traitors who are in political power. This is the thing. The treason for the British citizens is clear. Starmer serves Israeli interests before British interests. Biden has said it clearly, openly. They're saying Nancy Pelosi said it very openly, didn't she? She said Israel, even if America burns down and we're absolutely being destroyed, we will still not stop funding and supporting Israel. This is the ridiculous nature and reality of democracy, the pseudo democracy we have in the West. And I'll kind of shut up here because this whole Gazan tragedy has really served, and it's due to my condolences and my admiration for the people of Lebanon and for Palestine knows no measure, has no bounds now, because they, with their blood, are exposing every liar, every cheat, every criminal, every sadist, every genocidal maniac that was hiding behind suits, hiding behind desks, hiding behind all these kinds of little words like humanitarian aid or women's rights, or they were hiding behind the issues of equality, or they would hide behind democracy. These words, where are they now? Absolutely in tatters. Nobody gives a damn about the West and what its notions of human rights and equality are. And I think that myth has been shattered because of the blood of the martyrs. That's just the least of the debts that we have and we owe to them now.
Thank you, Mohsin bhai. We are heading towards the end of the show very quickly, so we just left with like around 15 to 16 minutes. So I would try to divide it in all of you. So it's like 6 minutes each, you can say. So Shabir bhai, how do you see what Mohsin bhai says? There are different segments of society which are actually helping these genocide and which are helping actually this kind of culture. And when we were discussing, when we were like, and I also mentioned, where is the Western civilization now? As Mohsin bhai also some aspects of that civilization he mentioned in his discussion, but he was referring to something like that as well. And recently some of the authors, like around more than like 1,000 authors around the globe, they have like boycott Israel as well. Like they won't like they were related to cultural institutions like Solly, Ronnie, Rachel Kushner, and kind of Arundhati Roy type of writers who are big authors around the globe. So there are more than 1,000. So what message does this kind of boycott gives? What is the role of culture that feed this kind of Zionist ideology, and they are able to commit this kind of genocide? And today we have seen in Gaza, they have bombed and more than 100 people martyred, and we have seen that UNRWA is banned. So what are your thoughts on these aspects? How would you conclude the whole discussion? What are most important messages from this weekend attack, and the response came from US and kind of Iran on that?
Thank you. I was very happy to listen to Sayyid Mohsin as usual. It's a joy to sort of hear his analysis all the time. Look, the two professions that I think he missed out were the accountants and the lawyers themselves. They are the most devious of all the characters in the city of London. The accountants are there to cook the books, to really give an impression that everything is hunky-dory, when the reality is that the economy is going down the tube, and the lawyers are there really throw them a silver penny, and they will sort of fight for the wrong cause all the time. And as we know, most of the politicians in the Western world, particularly in the UK and USA, are with the background of the legal profession. Even our Prime Minister used to be the chief prosecutor, if you like, but he was able to let go of people like Jimmy Savile and others at that time. So really, this Prime Minister has a very blemished record, if you like, historically. So you expect him to support the genocide. The question that you raised about the culture is, I think, a very profound question. We sometimes do not touch on it in our discussions, but we can see whether it's the Hollywood films, whether it's poetry or literature, particularly the Hollywood industry. He's really, if you see lots of films over the years, they on the one hand try to sort of portray Muslims as terrorists, and all the sort of good guys, white blue-eyed blondes who come and rescue the people who are in trouble. So it creates a cultural narrative that the imperialist West, the white man, is the rescuer of the world, and at the same time also indoctrinates the generation after generation into believing that it's the land of honey. That's why we have mass immigration from the developing world. Just for Pakistan, for example, last year 900,000 Pakistanis left Pakistan to find work either in the Middle East, or Europe, Canada, USA, Australia, or wherever. So this impression through the media, and particularly the film industry, portrays the West as somewhere that everyone should go and live. But on the other hand, when one looks at especially the immigrants coming from South Asia in UK, we see that 4, 5, 6 young men sharing one room, bunk bed upon bunk bed, sleeping. So really, when they send money back home, £1 is worth whatever 300, 400 rupees, or whatever currency that they may be. The parents and their family feel very excited that my son or daughter has sent so much money. But the reality is that those guys, because of that glamour which has been created through the industry, feel that this is the place to be. And I think that is one aspect that Iran has also done quite effectively. Iran is the third largest film producer in the world, after Bollywood, Hollywood, and then Iran. Iran produces more films than anyone else in this world, after the two premier leading. And as we know, many of the films, whether it's on Hazrat Maryam, or whether it's about the religious films, that they have had an impact on society. And Imam Khomeini, Ayatollah Khamenei, the rebel, has quite often pointed out that the battle is not just the battle that is taking place at the war front. Of course, the martyrs are really paying a price, but the battle is also a battle of culture, a battle of narratives, battle of how to get to the heart of the people through the film industry, through poetry, through culture, through literature. And that, I think, is one of the things that Iran has been very successful post Islamic Revolution. So Iran has really been fighting battles at multiple levels, if you like, militarily, economically, culturally. And those of us Muslims living in the West, I think it's an opportune time for us also to be thinking of how we can, culturally, through the film industry, through media, because this is a battle which is very, very important and very significant, which older people, younger people, next generation get influenced by the film industry or by the media or whatever they watch. And I don't even want to touch on social media at this stage, but really the organized, if you like, cultural aspects of the West need to be challenged. And of course, that is a battle that is going to be very effective. And we've seen through the last year, so on, with the genocide taking place in Gaza, that how the narrative has changed, because ordinary people have taken the tools in their hand, the mobile that they have, to create a narrative to support the oppressed people. And that, I think, is very, very important. And we really need to address that in a proper and effective manner.
Thank you so much, Shabir Bhai. Sister Batul, what are your thoughts collectively? Now we have just left with 10 minutes. So like 5 minutes I will give you. So how do you see the appointment of, Naeem Qasim, which has been appointed for Hezbollah today? I think recently, not today. And secondly, the most important thing, as Shabir Bhai and Mohsin Bhai also mentioned in their discussion, I mean, for the Muslim youth, especially because you are doing a great job as a young Muslim a female who is speaking around and working your best, mashallah. So what is your message, especially for our generation, especially related to this war? Because long ago I have read some quote which was which meant that if quote, I can't quote exactly, but it meant that our work should be so loud that enemies should see us as their enemy, for instance. So our it's not about like taking gun and killing somebody or doing something illegal, but it's like standing for truth, revealing truth, and doing things which are just, and standing up for whatever is righteous. So what are your collective thoughts on the whole discussion, and what do you think is Iran going to be? Look, I think so. It's fine. It is enough for. How would you conclude the whole discussion? I think so. It's better to do that way. I can't hear you, sister.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yes. I'll just begin by saying at the appointment of the new Secretary General, we have to understand that now the Islamic resistance of Lebanon actually, ironically, is in a stronger position than it was when we had the previous Secretary General, because we are at a turning point right now where, as a result of the killing of the former Secretary General, there is a real sense of anger, there is a real sense of revenge, there is a real sense of the collective resistance community coming together in fierce support of the resistance through their collective grief. So that grief has been channeled in a way that is leading to more decisive action on the ground and more force. So it's had the complete opposite effect of what the Israeli occupation entity intended, which was the idea or the belief that if you cut the head from the body, that somehow that will debilitate the body and that will weaken the morale. Actually, what you've just done is you've invoked a sense within the fighters on the ground that they want to join their leader. This was the person that they took as their hero and looked up to. Likewise can be applied to the rest of the civilian society. It's like now if they lose their home to the strikes, they're like, okay, well, after losing the Secretary General, whatever we lose doesn't come close to what we have lost, to what we can bear. So there is a real sense of heightened steadfastness in light of those supposed tactical wins that the Israeli occupation entity managed to secure. So I think the appointment shows how steadfast the resistance is, its ability to close those gaps and to turn supposed weaknesses into strengths and points of advantage to them. The strikes have not stopped. They've only intensified. The operations peaked, for example, last week on Friday, they reached up to 48 operations in one day, which is culminating in the Israeli occupation entity announcing that they want to halt the ground invasion because the losses are too much to bear. So we are approaching that. On your general question on the soft war and the importance of being active in that pursuit, what I would say is what cannot be proved in times of peace can certainly be proved in times of war. So this is a golden opportunity that is right in front of us. When the masks of deception have completely fallen, the people's ears are open. They are yearning for the truth. They are yearning for the pursuit of justice. This internal awakening is ultimately what will usher a new world order. The blood of Raza, the blood of Lebanon, the blood that's sacrificed on the ground is too great to not create this kind of turning point and change, and it's too great to overlook. The people are calling for change in a way that could have never been possible without this magnitude of blood. And as we know, the soft war is more dangerous than the hard war because colonization on the ground can only happen when the people have no morale to stand in the face of it. when people have no morale to sacrifice, because we know that change cannot happen without sacrifice. As Brother Shabir mentioned, and Sayyidina Hassan Abbas, the Islamic Revolution only managed to free itself from the shackles of Western hegemony, ultimately when it decided that they will prefer discomfort and that they will go in pursuit of core human principles and values, such as the ability to be free and independent. So people get very affected when they see sacrifice in action. For example, we saw a movement not long after the genocide began of people on social media unfollowing celebrities due to their silence on the genocide, for example. Who would have thought we'd reach this point where your average people in the West who are indoctrinated from a young age to take these individuals as their idols, to the point where when a celebrity comes out and endorses a politician, because let's bear in mind that even the entertainment industry is a political enterprise inherently. People from their kids from a young age are made to idolize these celebrities, and when they come out Beyonce endorsing someone like Kamala Harris, the idea is that the 500 million supporters of Beyonce on social media will go on to then support Harris. But we're noticing that actually people are coming out and are actually starting to realize what the celebrity industry is as a result of its connection to the whole global capitalist system. So that even that is being exposed. So I think ultimately what gives us strength to continue on this path, especially as Muslim, is to also believe in the promises of God. It's the promises of God in the Quran which gives one strength to be able to overcome those discomforts, and then to be able to sacrifice in pursuit of those divine objectives, and to understand ultimately what their duty and taklif is in a place here in the West, which is countering the soft war.
Thank you so much, sister. So, Mohsin bhai, we just left with 3 minutes. So, Kamala Harris has become mother today. I've been watching some kind of video, and she was saying, I am speaking as a mother of children. So, now she's feeling the pain of people of Gaza since 1 year. Children and mothers are being slaughtered, even the pregnant women, and we are seeing the parts of and the body parts of these innocent lives. So how much blood do you think do we need to wake up people of this world? I don't understand, especially the Muslim countries, especially if I narrow down further, Arab countries, Muslim and Pakistan, for instance, how much blood we need for this awakening. I mean, it's been a year and we are seeing these lives going. These are lives and these are families, so it's not something small. And secondly, what is coming after US election? Is there anything bigger coming, or it's just the way it's going on? Mohsin bhai, can you hear me?
Well, first thing is, I think that the reason that a lot of people still aren't. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay,
you can speak.
So, in a nutshell, just very quickly, I would say, first of all, the people of Gaza are giving the blood. Okay. So the people of Gaza are giving the blood. The people in Lebanon are giving it their blood. The people of the world of comfort, it's very hard to move very rapidly to where the mindset of Palestinians is, which is the real mindset of a real mu'min or a human being, I would say. How quickly you can get the people who live in the comfort zones, or whether they're east or west, is anybody's guess. But what I would like to indicate, and perhaps we could do a program on this separately because it's not going to be enough for this conclusion, but I'll mention it. I think Gaza represents, and the conflict in Israel itself represents the personification of everything that the New World Order, the Western Zionist New World Order wants to implement around the world. Agenda 2030, if we were to put it against what Israel is doing in Gaza, you've got everything from organ harvesting, everything from people who are willing to create 15-minute cities, to bomb the hell out of them, create concentration camps, collective punishment if they don't listen and behave according to what the authorities say. We've seen the extermination through the use of AI. We've seen them experimenting with every kind of modern technology. We've seen them also use the WHO when the WHO wants to get in and do vaccines for whatever reason they want to. That seemed to be okay, but all other humanitarian aid and health didn't seem to be either the WHO's concern, let alone the Western Zionists who back up the Israeli slaughter. So I'm beginning to pick up a lot of things which the very nasty background deep state moneylender mafia agendas in terms of what kind of world they want to shape for the future, i.e. hyper capitalist surveillance society. You know, they've done it all. In Gaza, they've been doing it all. In Lebanon, those devices that went off, that's an unheard of act of terror. But can you see how even your mobile phones and the use of all this AI and this technology has now gone to a next level? This should be a huge warning for all human beings around the planet, that we've now got to a stage where we're empowering the most nastiest, evil, most genocidal kind of maniacs, like Bill Gates, like the people like the Faucis of the world, all the front men, these characters who, we've got a big problem here. It goes beyond Gaza. And the only force, I think, that could possibly stand against the kind of world that they're trying to shape, regardless of what happens with this conflict, is Iran, because the Islamic Republic of Iran has some ethos and values about what human beings should be, and and I'm going to include the transgender agenda and the LGBT agendas and all those other soft power, cultural, psychological operations. All of this, ultimately, I have to put it in the frame of the bigger agenda that's going on, and maybe we need to talk about this again and relate it specifically to all the way the Israelis have been experimenting and doing their depopulation agenda there in Gaza. You see, if the world could see this as a microcosm of what could happen on a broader scale, if they want to, then I think it becomes far more sobering, just as sobering as perhaps the idea of a nuclear arms, confrontation. As well, which is also a distinct possibility if these maniacs and psychopaths in Israel and in America want that. You never know with these idiots. Maybe they want a meltdown of the economy to start again because they need to wreck everything, because their old system is already coming to an end where they just can't sustain it anymore. Anyway, that's probably opening a whole other can of worms, but suffice to say right now, the Islamic Republic of Iran is the hope of the world in every way, shape and form. And they are up to the challenge and they're stepping up to the plate, but they're doing it in a very masterful, very strategic, very slow, I'd say, war of attrition way, which is going to cause the least number of deaths. I know it's shocking to know that hundreds of thousands have already died in Palestine and Lebanon, but believe me, if these genocidals have their way, the deaths will be in the millions, not in the hundreds of thousands.
That's very true. Thank you so much, Mohsin Bhai. Thank you so much, Sister Batul. And I'm really grateful for Shabir Bhai as well, and really honored to have you all on the show for this important topic to discuss further in detail. And to the viewers, I would say we need to wake up and we need to try our best towards humanity, love and compassion, because this world needs good people to be awakened and fully active and playing their role actively. It's very, very important, because these innocent lives are going in front of us. It's not something we can leave it like that. So we do need to think about it, and we need to stand up for justice, peace and humanity. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening. Allah Hafiz.